I have none, Your Worship, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would someone like to propose a motion? Councillor Good.
I'll move the agenda.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
In favor.
Okay, thank you. It is carried. We have the minutes of February 12th. We've had a chance to review those. Are there any edits to the minutes? Someone would care to propose a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Councillor Ford moves that we adopt the minutes of February 12th. All those in favor?
In favor.
It is carried. Thank you. Public hearings, we don't have any. However, we do have a presentation from the Canadian Mental Health Association, Alberta Northwest Region. And Randy Arsenault, the Executive Director. If I'm saying your name improperly, please just correct me into the record and just come to the table and you just, on the microphone, press the red button and just leave it on and you'll be live.
Good afternoon, and yes, correct spelling. Madam Mayor, councillors, I thank you for allowing me to do a short presentation on your busy schedule. As mentioned, I'm Randy Arsenault, the Executive Director for Canadian Mental Health. I do have a small slideshow and a small 2-minute video, hopefully you don't mind, just to give you a little bit of overview of Canadian mental health. Canadian mental health nationally is over 100 years old. Our region in the Northwest, we started in 1995, just over 25 years. So we've been providing services to all the communities around the Northwest. I will start the slideshow. And this is just a short video to explain how Canadian mental health started right after the war. Well, oh, geez. Set the volume. If not, then. I will leave this with council if you'd like to listen to it during your time off.
For 100 years.
Hey, good job.
Oh. I'm sure. It did work.
Too boring. I'll show.
Maybe if you just send the link to
Yes.
Kayla and she can forward it to us and.
I left it on a thumb drive, so you can listen later if you like. I'll just go through list. I believe you have a handout in front of you from
Yes.
the agenda, and after presentation, I also have some handouts here about some programs that we offer for information later, including Recovery College schedule for the month, caregiver connections. I'll just leave it here. We have a board of directors. One is from Peace River and around Grand Prairie surrounding areas. And I realize time is important. I won't be too long. We have our senior management consists of over 30 years of combined experience for CMHA. Will Place, we have a 57-unit apartment building. It's for individuals that have a mental illness, a diagnosis, as long as they can live independently with outside support. We have, as I mentioned, 57 individuals, and without the support, they would be living in normal apartment buildings. We try to accommodate, we're a little more compassionate, I believe, than other apartment buildings. So we've had veterans stay with us. Our oldest tenant is 72 years old, I believe. Youngest one was 19 until recently, where she moved away. So a broad range.
This is in Grand Prairie.
In Grand Prairie, yes. We have our Recovery College and Wellness Center. We started 4 years ago, and it's our education approach focused on helping people that are ready to make that change in life. It's Recovery College and Learning Center. You don't have to have an addiction to attend any of our free courses. They're online and they're also face-to-face. I have a calendar here for February schedule just to give you an idea of the different courses we have. The Hub Resource Center is programmed out of Willow Place, and that really helps us strengthen the support of these individuals living in Willow Place. Without that extra support, they'd probably have a challenge in trying to keep housing, so we try to support them. Caregiver Connections also is a program where we also acknowledge people that are looking after their loved ones with their mental health or addictions. They need some support at home when they're having their loved ones at home. So we try to have group meetings and support for those. Mobile addiction outreach, we provide support for people that are living on the street homeless, giving them referrals to addiction, mental health, personal supplies, food. Recently, we've been going out handing hot chocolate, especially when it's cool out. So we probably had 23 trips out of Grand Prairie to take people back after they come for treatment or acute care. They need to come back to their community, and we actually acknowledge that, and we help people get back to their communities. For instance, we've had a few come to Priest River, Grimshaw, around the area. And we also have our Addictions Rural program, where we've developed a 20-day program. This is right now it's focused on the Indigenous population, Western Cree. There's 3 communities, Duncan, Sturgeon Lake, and Horse Lake. We go out there for 20 days at a time and provide that support. Disability services, we support clients with a developmental disability. We have, I believe, 18 clients right now. And this is, of course, Willow Place apartment. It was constructed in 2003. We've been doing it for a number of years. We have 5 lots we just purchased a couple of years ago. We're going to expand. In fact, we're just planning on building a new 55-unit apartment that'll mirror Willow Place. It's successful. There's a need for it, so we want to continue. Our rents are $750 a month, which includes all utilities, so it's very cheap. We're not there to make money. We're just there to help people that need support. And of course, we do have some other properties. We have a house that we run some programming through. We bought a building for our disability services and recovery college to run our programs out of, so people can come face to face for our programs, or we do online learning. We have our strategic plan for 21 to 26, and in our plan, along with our vision and mission, we know that people have the right for mental health. Our values: inclusiveness, proactiveness, equality, compassionate, and collaboration. Sorry, it's been a long day. And these are our action items: social systems, healthy cultural, community outreach, modernization, and housing. And part of our goals for housing is to go out and visit communities and see what the needs are in each of our communities. We have a good grasp in Grand Prairie, but we support the Northwest. So if you need housing or Grimshaw, like other communities, we would like to talk and see what the need is out there. For instance, I mentioned our 5 lots beside Willow Place. We're doing another apartment building. We're also talking with the local Legion, and there's a need for homeless veterans housing. And we're looking at building a small veterans village on 2 lots. The needs there, I was surprised here and there's over 20 homeless vets in Grand Prairie, so we're also having discussions for that. That's basically a quick presentation. I didn't want to take too much time, but I'm here to just let you know that we have a service out of Grand Prairie, and if we can help with your community at all, help you support your community, we're very open to have further discussions. We do, as I mentioned, on mobile addictions, I like to call it a wellness van. Addiction, mental health, sometimes it gives a wrong impression, but we've picked up people from the area. We've taken them in for either treatment or acute care. We've brought them back to the communities, and we'd like to offer our support. If there's any questions, I will try to answer, but I'm here basically just to offer our support to council for your community.
So how are your programs funded? It's fundraising, donations, or?
It's a mixture.
Grants?
We have two programs, the Hub program and Recovery College, that are partially funded through Alberta Health. And as we've heard in the local announcements, that we're going to be breaking Alberta Health into divisions, and one's mental health and addiction. So I believe those contracts will move over, but I think they'll still continue. With Recovery College, we do fundraising. We do, as I mentioned, I voted Alberta Health. I'm sorry, Government of Alberta. They do the funding. They partly fund about 75%. We've had fundraising. The city of Grand Prairie has donated, I believe, $5,000 this year to keep the program running because it's free. It's open to anyone, any number of courses, and just have to sign up and show interest.
So we've heard of the Grand Prairie Mobile Outreach Program. Is that this, or is that something else?
Right, there's two programs. One is a program that helps the homeless population in Grand Prairie, and at the same time, we're moving more into the rural support too, because there's such a need for it. We only have one, we have two vans, but we have only two individuals, two employees. So we're kind of stuck with using one van, and when we're transporting someone back to their home community, then there's no support in Grand Prairie and vice versa. But we do see the need rising into the rural communities, and we want to go where the need is.
So if there was a group in Peace River that wanted to set up something like this, you would offer assistance in terms of advice? Would you also perhaps think of having I don't know what to call it, outreach, like a secondary program in Peace River?
Well, actually, what I forgot to mention is the board's instructed me to look at the opportunity to bring and have an office based out of Peace River. I think there's a need for the surrounding areas, and Grand Prairie is 2 hours away. So if we have an office here, that was just approved a couple months ago. So I'm just doing the facts and finding and seeing what the needs are. But aside from this, I am going to be looking at seeing the feasibility of an office here in Grand Prairie, and then hopefully more services locally.
Well, as you probably know, our homeless population has increased significantly over the last couple of years. It's compounded, we think, by people who are released from the jail, and they end up being released here rather than moving back to communities or wherever. So they compound our issues between homeless groups, and we've had encampments, all sorts of things that just kind of add on to the thing. And mental health is definitely one of what people think and perceive as part of the problem with people finding a proper home and just having a different lifestyle, put it that way. Yeah.
Right, we do find when they're released, they have the option of going wherever they want. Sometimes they show up on a bus near Grand Prairie, dropped off and then it's up to them to find a way into Grand Prairie for resources. So we try to be aware when the bus is coming and having them at least ride to their shelter. Doing as much support as we can, but we are limited with funds, of course, but hopefully, if you need any help, here in Peace River, I mean, that's, an opportunity too. We've had experience over 25 years now. And the mental health is, people are starting to talk about it now. It's not hidden in the back room, so.
So councillors, do you have questions? Councillor Ford?
Yeah, mine was kind of along the same as your comment, Madam Mayor, was when you said about reaching out into other communities was my question was about expansion. So if you're gonna open an office here in Peace River, and if you find there's a huge need here in Peace River, would you be looking at expanding more than just an office here in town?
Oh, absolutely. The office, that's what I'm looking at, is having an office and then bringing programs, looking at opportunities for funded programs or services where we can hire locally and have it staffed locally and continue with the operations. There's lots of programs that are needed out there, and as we all know, it comes down a lot of times to funding, but I find that the communities they're behind mental health.
Yes, we all need some. And it's definitely a major factor in our lives these days. Councillor Carr?
So you don't employ psychiatrists and so on and so on and so on. Do you just refer to them? Like, who would you have as employees?
Psychiatrists, psychology, we refer that, same with addictions and mental health. We did have some surplus fundings a couple of years ago, and I hired a counselor or addiction counselor ourselves, because that's what I find is when you need a counselor, you're in a wait list. So it's nice to have that offered. Unfortunately, the funding ran out and I had to give up that program, but ideally, it would be nice to have our own counselor. As far as a psychiatrist, we can always refer that to the professionals instead of having a higher price person on appointment. But we do have addiction and mental health program is minimum. They have a diploma in addictions mental health. We have a social worker, a degree social worker on staff. So we try to accommodate whatever the needs are.
Do you know Councillor Boychuk? He's the big push in Peace River for helping the homeless.
Oh, no, I'm not.
He's not here tonight.
Right. I believe I sent him an email just to ask who I would contact to do a presentation.
You had sent
Oh, that was you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Oh, no, big
But no, I think it's expanding all the time, the homeless situation, and even in Grand Prairie, when I mentioned the Legion Veterans Village, we're looking at small individual housing, because what I'm finding is people want to have their own place, but they don't want to be together with a lot of people. They want their individual units, and our small houses that we're looking at gives them the freedom to have their own place and then have a centralized place where they can come and get support, counseling, washroom, showers. And I think that would work.
Do you have any business cards with you?
Yes, I did. I'll leave right here.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Arsenault. Lots of very good programs. I'm glad that you're working in Grand Prairie, and maybe something will happen in Peace River, because sometimes it's seems one of the steps in this whole process is agencies connecting with each other to know that they exist and how their
Great.
programming works, and then funding to follow. If everybody gets recommended to one agency and no funding follows it, it's kind of hard for them too. Yeah, well, thank you very much for your presentation tonight, and good luck with your future developments there and office spaces in Peace River to start with.
Well, thank you. And like I said, the video is on your USB when you have time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda, we have, bylaws and bylaw number 2145, land use bylaw number 1891 amendment, redistricting lot 1 block 10 plan 8820-437. And Ms. Bodie is here to lead us through the discussion.
Good evening, everyone. This bylaw is an amendment to the land use bylaw that redistricts a property near Glen Mary from our community development district to the R2 residential district. The redistricting will allow us to consider a change of use development permit application for a single detached dwelling, which is permitted within the R2 district. We did have first reading of this bylaw on January 8th, and we held a public hearing on February 12th. As noted in the public hearing, the application for the redistricting is inconsistent with our MDP, which does require a change to our future land use map for this. It is administration's intention to bring forward that amendment in the near future to council, but that does not need to stop this bylaw in its tracks right now. We can still proceed with that. So council has options before them this evening. First, to provide second reading of the bylaw, which would facilitate the change in the use of the building and allows for any further adjustments to the bylaw before we bring it forward for third reading. In terms of the financial implications, this is the same for majority of the options here. The property is currently tax exempt under the COPTR program, and if they're not using the building for the purpose of that exemption, then that exemption would end and property taxes would become owing on the property for the going forward. Option 2 would be to provide second and third reading for the bylaw, which would facilitate the change and would also mean that we are done the process this evening and they'll be able to move forward in the near future with that development permit application. And the third option would be to defeat the bylaw this evening, which would clearly indicate that we're not willing to consider a non-institutional residential use on the subject property. And if the property would remain aligned with the MDP, which means we would not bring that bylaw forward. But it does not facilitate the proposed change of use. So it is our recommendation that council provided second and third reading for the bylaw this evening. I can take any questions.
Thank you. So council, the last time we discussed,
Just one comment, I'll be abstaining from all votes on this, as I wasn't at the special, at the meeting, the presentation.
okay, thank you for letting us know. So we had quite an extensive briefing note and discussion at, I think, last council, or one of the dates you mentioned. So councilors, do you have any further questions on this matter? Or its intent? Would someone perhaps move us along with the motion then? Thank you, everyone here.
I move that council give second reading to bylaw number 2145, which amends land use bylaw number 1891 by redistricting lot 1 block X plan 8820-437 from COM to R-2.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
In favor.
It is carried. Thank you. If any councillor wishes to propose a motion with respect to perhaps third reading?
Yeah, I'll move that council give third reading to bylaw number 2145.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion?
In favor.
It is passed third reading. Thank you, Ms. Modi. And I think Ms. Modi just carries on now with bylaw 2149, land use bylaw number 1891, an amendment adding automotive electrical services. That's what it says.
Yes, thank you. Bylaw 2149 is another amendment to the land use bylaw. It adds automotive electrical services to our riverfront development district, which would apply to the property at 9710 94th Street in our downtown. The riverfront development district does not have an appropriate or applicable use for the proposed development and therefore requires an amendment to the land use bylaw before administration could consider a development permit application. So we have put forward an amendment that has a definition, a new use class for automotive electrical services, and adds that as a discretionary use to the Riverfront Development District. The option this evening is the council provide first reading to bylaw 2149, which would allow us to schedule a public hearing and allows for advertising notification and referrals to be circulated. And as we note, legislatively, we have received an application for this, so council does need to provide first reading so that we can have that public process.
Thank you. When you mentioned discretionary use, so that means that, say this passed all 3 readings and then someone else comes up and says, I'd like to do the same kind of thing in that area, they would have to, there would be a possibility that they would be not approved?
So in both circumstances, the applicant would come forward after the bylaw is passed, and it would become a part of the land use bylaw, then the applicant would make an application to the town, and as a discretionary use, that application would go before the Municipal Planning Commission for a decision. So it's not an as of right use, but typically
It's a possibility.
it's possible to decline, but typically you have to have a very good reason to decline, so.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. Councillor Carr?
What criteria makes it that you have to have a public hearing? Is it any time there's a change to a bylaw or an introduction to a bylaw, or what is the criteria for that?
Any change to a planning bylaw,
Well, planning by.
yeah, municipal development plan, area structure plan, intermunicipal development plan, land use bylaw, they all require public hearings.
Oh,
There's a specific section of the Municipal Government Act that establishes that requirement. And there's probably other bylaws that require hearings as well, but I'm not as well versed in those.
okay.
Any other questions? Okay, would someone like to bring forward a motion perhaps for first reading? Councillor Ford.
Thank you, your worship. I'll put a motion on the floor of the council, provide first reading to bylaw 2149, which adds automotive electrical services as a discretionary use to the Riverfront Development District, R-D.
Thank you. And just a supplementary question, so can you just refresh our memories as to what the timelines or anything like that for this process for public hearing?
For the public hearing, we have to undertake advertising and we have to do that in compliance with our advertising bylaw. Typically, we advertise a public hearing for no less than 2 weeks, which is kind of a holdover from when we had to advertise in the local newspaper, which ran every 2 weeks, and it was specific, it was 2 consecutive weeks in the paper. So that's our typical practice, is a minimum 2 week. And then depending on the amendment, there are also requirements to circulate to adjacent landowners. Not in this case, because it's not a rezoning, but in a rezoning circumstance, you would have to circulate to the adjacent landowners as well. So that also gives those adjacent landowners time to get their mail.
Okay, so we've got a motion in front of us for first reading. Any further discussion, question? All those in favor?
In favor.
It is carried. Thank you, Ms. Modi. And are you, oh, you're not up for the next one? Or are you? Well, no, you're not. Okay, so is she? Oh, then I'm number 3, automotive electrical contractor. Okay, so this is bylaw 2150?
Yes.
Land use bylaw 1891 amendment, adding contractor services. And Ms. Modi.
Yes, thank you. Last land use bylaw amendment for the evening. We've received another application to amend the land use bylaw for the purpose of enabling a use at the Old Fountain Tire Building in the downtown for the use of contractor services, which is not a use that's in our land use bylaw right now. So we have put together a bylaw that adds that use to the mixed commercial residential district, which is the district of the subject property, as well as to a variety of other districts within the town, primarily our industrial districts and some of the commercial districts. So the option here is to provide first reading to bylaw 2150, which adds the contractor services use as a use class and enables that use in 6 districts of the land use bylaw.
Great, and it's also a discretionary thing, right?
Okay, questions, Councillor Ford and then Councillor Carr?
Yeah, just going over the briefing note, when you mentioned the Old Fountain Fire location, now I happen to know who the applicant is. And so I'm just curious because that whole area, is under that CR district. That gentleman has been operating that business half a block down the street for years. So why this?
That's true. The reality is that land use enforcement often happens through complaint. We haven't received a complaint, but we also, I don't believe, actually, I'm not gonna say that we didn't approve that use at that location. It's possible that we did a very long time ago. The land use bylaw and the MVP with respect to some construction and automotive related uses probably did change quite a bit in 2003. And so it's possible that that business at that location has been legal for a long time, but we don't have the authority now to say yes, based on the way the land use bylaw is written today. I actually haven't done the research on the existing site, so I can't say that for certain one way or the other, but simply put, we don't have with the use classes in the land use bylaw, the authority to say yes, so we need to fill that hole. But the reason that we are doing that in this spot and then also across a number of other districts is because we recognize that we want to fix that gap in the use classes that we have available to us.
Okay, so if you were to do the investigation into, from what you had just said, into the property now and found it was a use, would this be necessary or not?
Yes, it wouldn't change it one way or the other.
I just find that curious.
Councillor Carr?
Actually,
Question?
you nailed it on the head. I was gonna ask the same question. Yeah.
Okay, any further?
Actually, I do have another question.
Okay, Councillor Carr?
I did see a list of, because I got a call from the gentleman as well. A list of all the things that qualify for that area. And it was quite specific, I thought, several pages. Is that standard to be that specific in something? Like if it's zoned? And I don't know, this is why I'm hoping we'll get that course one of these days. If it's zoned commercial residential, why would we not, rather than go through this, and again, looking forward to the course, why would we not just put a change of use and have people come and complain about it since it's already zoned commercial and he is commercial? Like, this is, I find it to be quite honest, anti-business and I'm sure there's a rule and reason, but it just eludes me.
The way land use bylaws are typically set up is that there are districts that have a purpose, and then there are specific uses that are enabled within that district. And typically, those uses can be quite specific. Don't want to get too far into the weeds, but there are different approaches to different use classes and how broad or specific you want to be. And if you come to a planning conference, that's a debate that people can have the whole time. Definitely, I've participated in some of them. Our bylaw, the way it's set up right now in that district in particular, it is very specific, and those uses that are listed there, they're tied to the definitions. And so if you fit within the definition, then we can deal with the application. If you don't, the definition is not something that the development authority has the authority to vary. That's set by council, and we have to abide by that. So if things don't fall within those definitions and those listed uses, then we don't have a lot of room to maneuver while actually acting within our authority.
So is that list a standard provincial list for a commercial residential area, or is that a Peace River list for a commercial residential area?
Every community is different. There's no
Okay.
provincial standard. Yeah. There's definitely similarities, but no community is a carbon copy of another.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Good?
just from memory, one of the reasons for definitions is, for example, you have residential. Well, there's single family residential, there's multifamily residential, and the discussion could be, why not let residential be whatever it wants to be, and if somebody wants to build a tower right beside a bunch of houses, have at it, you know, if you're gonna put the money up, it's up to you. But people have I think a lot of people would like to see kind of a consistency in an area. And if you had let's say, an area that was commercial shops, and somebody decides to put a steel foundry in the middle, take the middle bay and do that, well, that can have impacts on everybody around them. And I think, so the reason for the definitions historically, whenever I've dealt with it, is that the definitions are to keep kind of uniformity, to keep purpose, to keep, you know, to be able to consider those things in what you're deciding to put in. And I'm not speaking on this particular issue, but I think that the definitions are there generally because there's discussion ahead of time as to what you're going to see in that area and what could develop in that area. And that can change, and probably good that it can. I mean, if you're discussing, for example, I don't want to bring up an actual example if I can avoid it. Let's say on the far side of the river, it was done to be riverfront, whatever you wanted over there on the far, and I'm talking on the far side where all the industrial stuff is. The community might make a decision that that would be best if they had a bunch of shops in Lake Niagara on the lake over there. Well, you wouldn't want necessarily certain kinds of commercial at the same time. But 20 years after that decision is made, economy changes, things change, you come back, you revisit your situation, you say, what we thought would happen. And that was the case in the CR district, and I can speak historically. Not in the exact area you're talking about, but the area by the co-op was zoned, as you remember, residential to commercial to residential, residential to commercial. So if you had a house that burned down, you couldn't rebuild it. And it was stopping people from fixing their homes or doing that. So years after that first decision was made, the council, the day revisited, said, well, it makes sense under the changing circumstances to zone it the other direction. So that, I think that's just to explain a bit of why, in my own experience, why there are these definitions, because you want to keep like things. And just because a business person wants to do something in that particular area isn't always the deciding factor. And just because a developer wants to put a certain building in a certain place is not always the deciding factor. So I'm just ranting a bit, but
So basically,
I think it's necessary to have definitions. And that's why you can revisit. That's why you can go through the process. It doesn't stop the process. It doesn't stop a change. It allows people to discuss the change almost at any time.
that's the lovely part about public engagement when we're revising, amending land use bylaws in a way. Public has a lot to say if they so wish at certain times to make the document, and then, as you say, sometimes in the future, things change again. Okay, so where were we? Did we have a motion? Don't yet. Someone like to put forth a motion on this one?
You just have to read it.
Okay, Councillor Good,
I'll move for a first reading of land use bylaw 1891. Just want to make sure I'm correct.
2150.
2150, which adds contractor services as a use class and enables that use in 6 districts of the land use bylaw.
Good, and just remember your microphone, but any further discussion? Yeah, okay, all those in favor of that reading or that motion?
In favor.
It is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Modi. Thank you. Okay, next up, we now have, bylaw 2147, fees and charges bylaw for 2024, and amendment bylaw number 2148. And Ms. Miller, CAO, is gonna lead us through these.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the request for decision as mentioned before you is we're seeking second and third reading of bylaws 2147 and amending bylaw 2148. which is to update the canopy service fees and charges for 2024. So the schedule presented before you, the only change that was made since we last brought this before council was around the taxi pass. It's been redlined and it was simply a correction to GST is not included in taxi passes. They're actually like a gift card. It's like purchasing a payment in advance, like a gift card, and then GST is actually collected when the service is provided. So it's just a slight correction on our schedule and in our accounting system. And other than that, we would hope that council move forward so we can put the fees in place for March 1st.
Councilors, any questions? And this is the second time we've seen these proposals. If there's no questions, then would someone move that council gives second reading to bylaw 2147, the fees and charges bylaw for 2024?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Oh, okay, we'll get you. Councillor Scamahorn so moves. All those in favor?
In favor.
Is carried. Perhaps Deputy Mayor, you would move that council gives third reading to the same?
I can move that council give third reading to bylaw number 2147.
Thank you. Any further questions? All those in favor?
In favor.
Okay, we've got a proposed motion on the other bylaw. Move that council give second reading to bylaw 2148, an amendment to bylaw 2075. Someone like to move that? Councilor Good.
Let's put the mic on. I'll move the council give second reading to bylaw 2148, amendment to bylaw 2075.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
In favor.
Okay, it is carried. And now perhaps someone would go to third reading of that, same? Councillor Ford. Councillor Ford moves the council give third reading to bylaw 2148. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
In favor.
It is carried. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Unfinished business, we don't have any on the list. New business. Receivable write-offs with Mr. Buckford.
Evening, Madam Mayor. At issues, administration has compiled a list of receivables that are recommended for write-off by council. The last write-off of uncollectible accounts was brought before council on June 2nd, 2022. So as part of the year-end audit process and in accordance with best practice, administration has compiled the attached list of receivables which are recommended to be written off the town's books. The listing includes the amount, customer number, type of receivable, year of origin, and additional information justification for write-down. The finance managers thoroughly reviewed the listing and determined the amounts should be cleared from the receivable subledger. All items have been recorded prior to 2023 as expenses through the allowance for bad debt. So basically at the time that they were deemed to be unrecoverable, at that point, they were recorded as an expense, which is in alignment with generally accepted accounting principles. So the options before council this evening are to approve the write-off in the amount of $396,636.59 of uncollectible receivables as detailed in the attached list for write-off. The advantages of that are it's in accordance with best practice and will clean up the receivable subledger. There's no disadvantages, as I say, at this point. Any subsequent recovery of funds will reverse the write-down, but at this point in time, they're deemed to be uncollectible. In terms of financial implication, the elimination of the receivable and the corresponding allowance for doubtful accounts has no impact on the income statement. So again, we've already recorded this as an expense in a prior period. This is just simply the process of clearing it off of our books. Option 2 would be for council to decline the write-off. And no advantages for that. The disadvantages, it leaves it on our sub ledger and there's no change to the net receivable. The recommendation from administration is the council approve the write-off in the amount of $396,636.59 of uncollectible revenues as detailed in the list for write-off attached to these minutes. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
So at one point in time, we would have expected to have income of the 396,000. So that means taxpayers would not be coming up with 396,000 if people had paid their taxes here or their whatever. Their bills,
At one point, and again,
their bills, I should say, not.
there's 3 pages of transactions there, but at one point they were recorded as revenue and subsequently there's determination that the revenue was uncollectible. And at that point in time, a bad debt expense was recorded along with an allowance for doubtful accounts.
Yeah.
Which is the allowance is a contra account to your receivables. So as soon as we record that allowance on your financial statements, you would just see the net amount.
So I don't think I should have used the word taxes. I should have said whatever the invoice was for, whatever service the invoice was for, in a sense. Even these airport ones, right? There's some rather large airport ones there, so people would have owed the airport account line at some point in time and then didn't pay.
So if you got specific questions, then I'd recommend we move in camera
Yeah.
under section 16.
Just generally, that's what the scenario would have been, though. They didn't pay whatever the bill was. Yeah, okay, gotcha. Any further questions? Okay, Mr. Mugford has given us the information. Would someone be prepared to put forth a motion? Councillor Carr?
I'd like to move the council approves the write-off the amount of $636,636.59 of uncollectible receivables as detailed in the attached list of write-offs.
Thank you. Any further questions? All those in favor of the motion?
In favor.
It is carried. Thank you, Mr. Mugford. And now apparently you're going to tell us about out of scope 2024 salary adjustment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Administration is presenting a proposed 1.5% cost of living adjustment to non-union or out of scope employees, the out of scope salary grid. So the town maintains separate salary grids for in-scope, unionized and out of scope non-union employees. The in-scope grid receives adjustments through the collective agreement bargaining process, while the out of scope grid is adjusted through the annual budget process. Administration is recommending a 1.5% increase to the out of scope salary grid for 2024. This increase equates to approximately $67,000 and is included in the approved 2024 budget, but was not identified as an individual line item during the budget discussion. So just a bit of clarification around that. In previous years, as part of being presented during the budget process, the council was explicitly informed that X percentage is included as a cost of living adjustment for non-union employees. And that's why we brought this before you this evening, so that again, because we didn't explicitly state that that amount was included in the budget, we wanted to be transparent. So the options before council are to approve a 1.5% cost of living adjustment to the out of scope salary grid effective April 1 January 2024. Advantages, increase employee morale and maintain a moderate and attractive compensation package. The disadvantage is just the financial implications and cost of additional funds of approximately $67,000, which, as I said, is included in the 2024 budget. Option 2 is council does not approve the 1.5% cost of living adjustments to the out of scope salary grid. So there'd be advantages are there'd be no financial implications to the town. Disadvantages include disgruntled employees, low morale, motivation. We'd also fall further behind inflationary rates in COLA, which can be difficult to catch up if you fall too far behind. The recommendation from administration is that council approve 1.5% cost of living adjustment to the Everscope salary grid effective pay period 1 of 2024. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
So 1.5% COLA as of January 1, 2024. So what I'm correct? Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? Counselor Good?
I'll make a motion if you'd like.
Sure.
Move the council approve a 1.5% cost of living adjustment to the out of scope salary grid effective 2024 pay period 1.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
In favor.
It is carried. Thank you, Mr. Rutherford. Okay, and now we're on to a notice of motion that was, where are we?
No, it's not for that one.
I'm sorry,
Utility rate file.
we couldn't get away. Okay, Mr. Mudford, Director of Corporate Services, now the utility rates model 2024 information.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a briefing note, in October 2023, the town awarded a request for proposal to develop a utility rate model to Intergroup Consultants Limited. Over the past few months, significant progress has been made in collecting relevant data and constructing a model. Once completed, the model should allow us to better determine what our revenue requirement is to ensure adequate funding of operating and future capital needs. It will improve transparency and fairness as we better understand the cost of providing service to our numerous customer classes. Administration is currently reviewing the first draft of the new rate model with the intention of bringing the model and resulting recommended changes to the utility rate bylaw to council in the spring with the targeted effective date of January 1, 2025. So if you recall, as part of 2024 budget process, council approved a 5% increase across the board to fixed and variable water, wastewater revenue. So we're not falling any further behind as a result of not implementing this change until January 1. Take any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Counselors, questions? So we've got the plan, and the plan, hopefully by the spring of this year, we'll have more information to know better what our rate should be to follow through on our commitment to allow the utility budget to basically pay for itself. That kind of right?
Yeah, the intention is to get to a point that your water and wastewater and storm sewer funds are all self-liquidating and that they're capturing enough revenue to support the current operating costs along with the future capital replacement needs. To strike a balance between funding your capital replacement through reserves and through debt.
Great, thank you. Any further comments, questions? Perhaps someone would move this for information. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
The proposed motion, I move that council accept the briefing note regarding the utility rate model update for information.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion?
In favor.
Great, we're looking forward to the report. Okay, then the next item is February 12th, 2024 notice of motion, and presenter is Mrs. Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. So council administration is just seeking further direction regarding Councillor Ford's notice of motion that was read into the minutes February 12th. The notice, as a reminder, states that Councillor Ford moved to direct administration to look into leasing the land from the landowner, provincial government, and or the federal government from the town of Peace River property lines to the Peace River's water's edge on both sides of the river within the town of Peace River limits. So in accordance with the town's procedural bylaw, we would like further direction.
Okay, and I just want to clarify, Councillor Scamahorn, did he leave?
Counselor Scannaford had to leave. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, not good, but thank you. Okay, we've got this notice.
Okay, that'll be on Facebook.
Yeah, that'll be over tomorrow. Okay, so we've got this notice of motion, basically asking whether or not we want to direct admin to find out more information as to what it would mean to lease the land on both sides of the river from the other orders of government. Is that right?
Yes, I can provide a little bit of background if you'd like,
Okay.
your worship. So basically, from the discussions we've had at the RCMP Advisory Committee and with the RCMP, where the encampments are along the riverbank currently lie on Crown property. So the town of Peace River property line is just over the edge of the dike, like 10 to 30 feet, somewhere in that area. So the encampments fall between the town of Peace River property line and the water's edge, which is Crown property. And I do believe the water is governed by Oceans and Fisheries. So currently, in order, the town right now has its arms tied as far as being able to move or take down an encampment down there, as it's not our land. Right now, the only way to move or tear down an encampment would be the encampment move voluntarily, or the RCMP approach the provincial government and get a direction order from one of the provincial directors. And then that order would be served to the encampment with a 3 months notice. Once the encampment moves, they can move totally gone, or they can move 50 yards downstream or upstream. If they choose to move that 50 yards, then the process starts all over again. The reason for the notice of motion is to look into seeing if the town can have that land into our coffers, like even if we lease it for $1 a year, the liability to that, I think, would be quite minimal, but that would be something that administration would have to look at. But if it is successful, we could possibly lease it under a what's the word I'm looking for? Under like a protective area type lease, so that there is no development. It would be just like the Green Valley Park up the Heart River. But if it is in the town's control, then our camping bylaw would fall in order, where if we see an encampment go up, you're not allowed to camp there. That encampment can be immediately asked to be taken down, or it can be removed. It's not something that I would put the town staff involved with, but it would give RCMP more control. And if the RCMP can't do it, we have Apex and Security in town, which has experience of removing encampments. So that could be contracted out. But with that being said, it's just another tool in the toolbox to help with all the wraparound services that the community in a bunch of the area is working on. And yeah, I'd just like to see what the outcome of that is, if we could even possibly lease those lands.
Okay, so any further discussion on the topic? Okay, so I think the way this works is it's as if Mr. Ford made the motion right now, which we're going to read it out, and then we vote on it.
That's correct.
Okay, so any further discussion? You want to read the motion?
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Ford moves to direct administration to look into leasing the land from the landowner, whether it be the provincial government and or federal government, from the town of Peace River property lines to the Peace River water's edge on both sides of the river within the town of Peace River town limits.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? It is carried. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have, the topic is, nuclear power plant. And, just get back here. So I brought this forward, but The way it started is that myself, Deputy Mayor Shannon, and Councillor Carr from Economic Development Committee were invited to a meeting with the MLA, Dan Williams, and about 8 other people, some of whom are connected to a company called Alberta Energy. And there were others there as well. So anyways, it was just an informal meeting, but they are informing us that they're looking into the possibility of establishing a nuclear plant in our area. In their minds, it's a can-do type nuclear plant. It would, of course, go through environmental scrutiny and public consultation and so forth. But it's kind of timely in light of a month or so ago when we were all asked by our Alberta utility companies to turn off the lights, turn off the dishwashers, etc. on a Saturday night. So it probably brings to mind that we do need stable sources of power, both now and in the future. So my purpose in putting this on the agenda was just to bring this to public awareness that there is a conversation going on with respect to a nuclear power plant. It's not the same people, but people are connected to the power, or the nuclear power plant that was being proposed, I don't know, several years ago. I don't know how many, 2011. So Councillor or Deputy Mayor Shannon, Councillor Carr, do you have anything you'd like to add at this point in time?
Yeah. Thank you. I think we should make it known that the province is looking at building 4 of them within the province. It's not a one-off for this area, so if we, in my opinion, do not get behind this, someone else will reap the rewards.
Mayor?
I agree with Councillor Carr. Just a few other things I'd like to mention. It's not only good for Peace River, it would be good for the entire region. You know, it's only in the discussion stages. I mean, we have a lot of time to discuss the pros and cons, but it's going to be hard with the need for power. It will be pretty hard to find a reason to say no or to not get behind this. And you know, I think our town is expensive to run. You know, our geography alone gives us a lot of grief. And we need the economic stimulus. You know, we haven't made any meaningful contribution to our economic development budget in over a decade. So I think it's really timely that it'll be a good stimulus for our region. And I think we can be an energy capital of Alberta here.
The group was going around talking to various other municipalities and other groups within those municipalities. So I guess we are looking forward to their next visit or an announcement from them, just more formally putting their thoughts in the general public's preview, I guess. So Councillor Ford.
Yes, I kind of heard some rumors about it, but for those that were at the meeting, can you, was there any information disclosed as far as the cost of the build, how many people for construction, and how many people it could possibly employ once the construction is done? I heard some rumors on numbers, but not 100% sure.
I don't know if I'm 100% sure either. So I think we might need to wait for them, but if you have a thought. Go ahead.
I had spoke to them after. I think that it's safe to say there would be at least a couple thousand permanent jobs, and leading up to the jobs, there would be more than that in the construction phase. So I just want to add as well that it's a nonpartisan issue. Energy is a nonpartisan issue, and all of us collectively have to really consider this for the right reasons.
And, you know, these days too, if people have concerns about environment, whatever concerns, there will be public processes.
And that's like our land use bylaw. Well, this is just another type of thing. So there'll be public consultation, all sorts of environmental things that you hear with oil and gas. Well, it'll apply to a nuclear plant as well. So people can be reassured that they can have their say. We would also expect that we're going to get some pretty up-to-date information on the type of plant and all sorts of some of the technical issues. They have indicated they will be informing us fully about that kind of thing. So it looks promising, and it's very promising from an economic viewpoint for our entire region. Peace River, as has been indicated, well, we have lots of services that people look for when they're wanting to move to an area for a job. And you never know what the possibilities are, I think. So that's about all I want to or can say. I don't know more at this point in time. So we just wanted to bring it to council's knowledge and keep it as transparent as we can in terms of what the discussion is. So perhaps I could get someone to move that council accept a verbal briefing note on nuclear power for information. Councillor Good,
I'll move the council accept the briefing for information.
thank you. Maybe we'll just add verbal to it, if you wouldn't mind. Is that okay, or do you?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Ms. Parsons, you've got that one. All those in favor of the motion? It is carried. Thank you. Okay, board member appointment, Town of Peace River Community Services Board. Mrs. Miller?
Thank you, Risha. So, before you is a request for decision regarding Community Services Board member appointments. They have recently received 2 resignations, and we have received interest in a new applicant. So, to start with, I guess, the Community Services Board, the 2 resignations that they received were members at large Paras Shukla and Tiana
Revolcon.
Oh, thank you. So in the past, we haven't brought forward requests for decision or asking for a motion of council for members that have resigned, but given the fact that council appoints the members, we're trying to keep track of appointments. We're bringing forward for council to make motion and recognizing their resignations. The Community Services Board, as it says in the request for decision, did thank the members and gave each of them a gift in recognition of their service. And then moving after that, we're looking for a motion for the new applicant, Crystal Owens, to be appointed. The Community Services Board has considered that application. Crystal's application is moving forward with the recommendation of appointment.
Thank you. Okay, so councillors, would you perhaps move the acceptance of the notice of resignations first, and then we can appoint somebody else? Deputy Mayor, please.
I can move that the council appoint Crystal Owens.
Oops, yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I move that council accept notice of the resignations of Tiana Revolcon and Paris Shulka from the Community Services Board for information.
Thank you. All those in favor? Great, and thank you to those 2 for their service on the Community Services Board. Another motion, maybe with respect to the appointment of a new member, Council Board.
Just one question, Community Services Board, isn't Crystal Owens already on that board and this is just an extension for another 3-year term?
She was the chair.
Yeah. So she wouldn't be a new member, but
Was she there because she was appointed by an external body to be a rep on that board?
she
This
was,
is as a-
she was appointed as a public member at large through,
She wasn't a trustee, was she?
I'm not sure.
We could table this motion then, or you could appoint, it would just be a reaffirming another 3 years. Or we can table this and wait till the director comes back to confirm dates.
Councillor Good, and
Could we move to accept or affirm the appointment? Put them both, we will either accept or affirm the appointment of Crystal Owens to the Town of Peace River Community Services Board as a public member at large for a 3-year term. If that's an acceptable motion, it covers both bases.
So are you moving that?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Good just made a motion. Ms. Parsons, you got the motion? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Great, it is carried. Okay, 2024 Alberta Municipalities Convention Resolutions, Ms. Miller.
Sorry, Richard, I just have to catch up here. Right. This is for discussion for council regarding the up and coming Alberta Munis Convention in the fall, and they're now opened opportunity for resolutions to be brought forward to be put on the floor at the convention in 2023. Just a reminder that the town was the seconder for the motion on mental health supports and addictions. And I guess it's open for discussion.
So in other words, is there a topic that we would like to investigate at least, putting forth a resolution to the Alberta Munis Convention? Last one was on, like we did with Grimshaw, so that was kind of done. We have a few moments to think about this, I think, don't we?
Oh, we have until May 31st, so
Yeah.
we can bring it back and the council
Yeah.
will have some consideration time.
So maybe we can move this for information at the moment and people keep it in the back of their mind if something comes up. Okay, who would be prepared to put forth a motion that council accept this for information?
Sure.
Unless somebody else got different wording, or that's okay?
No, that's fine.
Okay, Councillor Ford moves that this be accepted for information. All those in favor? Thank you, it is carried. Next up, we have proposed provincial funding transition for regional economic development alliances. So this is groups such as PREDA. And Ms. Miller.
Yes, I thought this was interesting information to bring forward for council's awareness. We recently joined REDA and, or PREDA.
Yeah.
Recently joined PREDA, and just recently I had came across an article regarding the provincial government's intention to transition funding away from such economic development organizations. And so there was information in 2019 there that they had increased the budget. Well, they had reduced it, then subsequent to COVID, they enhanced or increased the funding to get re-stimulated. But now their plan or their intention is to completely stop funding, as near as I understand, in the 2026-2027 budget, with the intention that the individual economic development organizations will raise their funding through their membership. So just be aware in future budgets that we will be asked to contribute more for being part of that organization. And maybe there would be some advocacy interests with the municipalities moving forward to try to reverse some of that decision of the province.
Including perhaps a resolution. You could think about this one for that purpose. Yeah, I understand the discussions were that, well, the REDA should get out there and form more partnerships. Well. Where are you gonna find money from is our issue. So, any further questions on the briefing note though? I would like to suggest though that we keep in mind for perhaps a resolution. I think there's a PREDA meeting coming up, so I think this will be a topic of discussion as well, and I can see what happens there and bring it back to you. How's it good?
Can I move this be decided to be tabled until after that meeting and then brought back for discussion. Okay, so moved.
Okay, Counselor Good, so moves that we discuss this future after a little more conversation happens. All those in favor of that motion? It is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Miller. Okay, council open house, March 7th. Who's gonna talk about this?
I don't keep up today, I'm sorry.
Well, sometimes we fly and sometimes we don't.
There's a lot of pages today. Okay, so as mentioned, the topic is the calendar that was adopted for this year included a council open house on March 7th to give, members of the public opportunity to come have coffee with council, ask questions. So we haven't quite decided on the location. We were looking at the museum or the NAR station and was wondering if council had any input on either of the locations or another. We were hoping to just change venues from the Baytex where we've had it the last 2 years.
This is next week.
Following week. Oh yeah, it is next week, next Thursday. Mhm.
Well, council, first of all, do we still agree with the date? Second of all, any opinions on location?
I like the museum. Very easy access, wheelchair friendly.
Okay, any other comments? We need to get the word out there. It's been in our calendar, but kind of so. Yeah.
Well, having said that, not much time and not much word out there is, and I have no opposition to the 7th. But is that, looking at it, is that the best date, or should we give people a few weeks? And because the lack of communication is kind of on us. No.
It would be my opinion that we give it another 2 weeks because we don't historically have a great turnout. So maybe if we gave it a little more time, we would attract more residents.
Just go take a look at the calendar here.
Admin, do you have any?
Sorry, Your Worship, we're having a little bit of a side. It's felt that we don't typically do much in advance advertising for an event like this. So we would get the word out, we would do a little bit of radio, we'd get some flyers out to, the senior center and whatnot, but
Yeah, the last turnout at the Baytex was not as good as the previous. And I don't remember the dates of either one rightly, but. Deputy Mayor?
We have to remember that when we're at the Baytex, we have a built-in audience kind of because people are there anyway. When we are going to a separate and venue like this with no regular attendees, then we need to make sure that we have somebody there to actually be at the open.
Councilor Ford?
Well, I can remember a number of years ago, we had the open house in the basement of the Athabasca Hall. And it was well advertised and we had probably 30 plus people show up. Wow. But there again, that was a number of years ago, but
I was one of those people. I remember that very clearly. It was very well done and the setup was really well done too.
Okay, so conundrum.
so I was just gonna say, there's a difference between well advertised and being advertised well in advance. So there could be a real heavy blitz, and I don't know about a lot of people, but lots of myself. If I hear about it 2 months in advance, I'm gonna forget about it anyways. I need to hear about it tonight, but it's tomorrow, just because of my schedule. So, I just wanted to put that out there that it can still be well advertised, but not advertised for long.
Yeah, that's true. I agree.
So do we leave it for next Thursday? 14th, I'm going.
oh. Next Thursday.
One more, if I may, Your Worship, the Christmas one that we do in Christmas time, we tend to put more, or try to put more informative details of boards and whatnot. But this format, we were thinking more of just a conversation with council, like, let's just have a coffee and let's see where the conversation goes with anybody. We will have information there, but we weren't planning to do a lot of presentation boards and stuff. We wanted to kind of just keep it really
Oh, okay.
relaxed and informal.
What was the time for that?
4 to 6.
I know that Northern Lakes has an open house, somewhat virtual, starting at 6 o'clock that night, so that would. Nicely, that perhaps. Okay, so if it was 4 to 6, location, any thoughts?
Museum.
Museum is next. Yeah. Maybe somebody can get Chamber of Commerce so they can fork it out. Do they have a meeting this week, Chamber of Commerce or not?
March 6th. Right, the day before this.
Yeah, so it needs to get to them this week.
Yes.
And anybody else that might be interested. Okay, so is that what we're agreeing, everyone? March 7th, the date that was set, 4 to 6 p.m. at the museum. Tell everybody that you know. Are we having any goodies? We will have some. Absolutely. Okay, let's see, do we need a motion on this? Yes, perhaps someone would accept or move the council accept the briefing note regarding the March 7th, 2024 council open house for information. Councillor Carson moves, all those in favor? Great, it is carried. The next step, we have Peace Library Services discussion with CAO Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is a bit of a long report. I'll try to walk through it as best I can and keep it short. So first I want to say that the library, this report, when I wrote this report, did not in any way take any consideration into the value of the library in our community. We all know that the library is an important piece of fabric in our community and provides highly valuable and important services, but it was all around the financial request of the library. So in the spring of 2023, the Peace Library presented to council their 2023 budget and their 2024 to 2027 operating budget plan. And in that ask, it included a 5% increase each year of the 5 years to their municipal requisition, which was at the time when they presented $356,000, and the request, if is honored each year by council, would result in an additional $100,000 being added to their municipal requisition between 2023 and 2027, or 2022 and 2027. So the rate of increase year over year in annual operating funding that's been requested from the library is concerning to administration. The minimal increases that we receive in our municipal requisition each year that we bring forward for council to adopt barely funds the additional expenses and operating costs such as policing and utility expenses that administration is unable to control. So it goes without saying that without new revenue from continuous development that spurs assessment growth, we must always view our budgets through a lens of austerity, seeking out efficiencies, narrowing the scope of service, expanding our revenue options in order to minimize the municipal requisition increases that affect our annual property tax levied on our ratepayers. So following the inflation conditions that we experienced in 2022, council did approve a 5% increase to the library's requisition in 2023. That granted them an additional $18,000, which gave them $374,000 in 2023 over $356,000 in 2022. But the 5 years continuing to do so is not sustainable, and under the current economic conditions, in order to do so, it would require an increase to the mill rates, drawn reserves, or changes to level of service in somewhere else in the town. The 2024 operating budget that was presented and was adopted did not include an increase to the library funding. It maintained the 374,000 allocation from 2023 because I felt we needed more information before I could provide a solid recommendation. So to work on that recommendation, I sought some information from the government of Alberta to do some benchmarking of the Peace River Library against other libraries within the province that are serving a population between 5,001 and 10,000. And when we compared those statistical information, it demonstrated that the town of Peace River is the 7th highest funded out of 32 municipalities in 2021. And in 2022, not all communities had completed their reporting at the time, but we also ranked 7th highest in the number of libraries that did report for 2022. When you converted the annual contribution to a dollar rate per capita in 2021, town of Peace River ranked 5th highest of 32 municipalities at $52.03 per capita versus an average of $32.88 per capita. And it's important to note that the 374,000 that was granted or is given is for the local library only. We also are requisitioned and provide funding to the regional library services. So when we took a look at the first set of stats that came out of the financial analysis, I felt like I should look at a few more things. And I noticed a few governance observations, in particular around the library board members, audit requirements, and minutes. And so in the summary here, and I'll go through my recommendations, but I've noted a number of recommendations for council's consideration and future discussion, starting with based on the initial financial benchmarking comparatives. I recommend that council does not provide increased funding in 2024, but maintains the level that was approved in the budget. Recommended the council request the library board undergo a complete service level review so that they could perhaps identify any redundancy in programs that maybe they're offering that others such as FRN, FCSS, Segatawa, or other like organizations are also providing. They also look for outdated, costly, or undersubscribed programs and seek operating efficiencies. Administration has begun and will partner with the library to advertise for new board members, and that the library board actively recruit for future members within a week of the vacancies. Recommend that the library board chair be advised of the audit requirements for 2023, and then future that this council approve the 2023 auditor, and then we will take over from there as per the bylaw. We recommend that the library chair present the audited financial statements on an annual basis before council, that the library director forward the board minutes to council on a regular basis, and that council informs the Peace Library Board of the ICF agreement term and the budgetary impact that council will be faced with that challenge in 2028, and that the board begin building funding relationships and developing strategies to best prepare for the future's uncertainty. So for background.
One of the questions I have, and it's just because I couldn't figure it out for what I was looking on here, is that some of these municipalities, like the county of St. Paul. Question is, do they have a library? The library might be in St. Paul and it's being funded by the region, for example. So saying that a municipality has this much and they're spending this much may not really be an accurate reflection of how much funding the library in a central location receives. And what I wouldn't mind seeing is an analysis, because it should be able to be done, of where the libraries are and what municipalities are using their funds to fund the central library. Because I think that might also give some information that would be relevant to the discussion. If you have an MD that's, and I don't know any numbers here, so I'm throwing this right up in the dark. You could have a very, very wealthy municipality with a moderately wealthy town, just for an example, and the county may throw a lot of money at it, the county may not, whatever. Doesn't really matter. The library's there, and there's X amount of funding. And this doesn't give me a kind of, what is the funding for X size of the library or a library with X amount of services? So we're dealing with a definition that doesn't tell you what product we're buying here or what product. We don't know if these libraries that we're looking at are very small. We don't know if they're large. We don't know what their facilities are. And yet we're trying to make a decision on, is our funding relevant or in comparison? And I think it's an incomplete analysis.
Thanks. Any other comments? No? So this is presented to us basically to start thinking about. Yeah.
Yes, did you want me to continue?
Yep.
I will just make one comment. I use the stats that the province uses to compare against, and it's all by population. And that's all I can do at this point without going out and seeking more details. You know, this was high level for you to look at considerations for funding.
Well, I recognize that, and I recognize that the funding, that the numbers that you receive, for example, from MFIS, for example, don't necessarily drill down into stuff like that. But if we're being asked to make a decision on it, and we're using it as a comparison, to my mind has to be somewhat valid. Be like saying, well, these guys fund a multiplex for $20,000. These guys fund a multiplex for $500,000. They're both multiplexes. Well, be quite different. So, and I'm not sure where it's going to go as a direction of council, how deep to go, but I know there are intermittent. I'm just looking at this list. I know for a fact that not every one of those municipalities listed has a library, even though they may fund it. It could be a situation where one of the municipalities surrounding decided not to fund it because they don't have to. So they said, no, we're not going to fund it. Well, that puts any responsibility for a library in the region on the partner beside. If it's going to stay going, or to go out and tell them to go dig up the money on their own, so.
Okay, so CAO Miller.
Okay, thank you. So under the Libraries Act, as you're saying, libraries, they're established by the council, but then once they're established, they are a corporation of their own. They have full management control of the library. So unlike other requisitioning boards such as North Peace Housing, council, where they have no say, council has all the say in the library funding. So it's at their full authority to accept the local library's operating budget plan as presented in whole or in part. So our library was established in May of 1985 and has had amending bylaws really just to change the composition of the board. In preparation of this briefing to council, our bylaws were looked at, provincial statistics were looked at, Libraries Act, Libraries Regulation, several websites were looked at, and some discussions were had with the library director. So the library board composition, the bylaws that are in place, moved the library composition of the board to 10 members. One being a member of council, which is Councillor Wojcik, and 9 being members at large. So currently the Peace Library Board has 5 members, including the member from council, and their terms expire between November 2024 and September 2025. They recently accepted a resignation and will be bringing forward a request for a decision for council to accept that resignation. And so the library board, the minutes of the library board demonstrate that the library has been operating at less than full complement for more than 1 year. The impact of that is having a fully appointed, engaged board ensures governance, guidance, and support necessary for providing public library services. The library board's functioning at less than full complement leaves all the other standing members being tasked with additional responsibilities and often results in burnout of volunteer members. And the recommendation there is, as mentioned, that we begin actively recruiting for library members, and then once the resignation happens, they begin to recruit immediately. The minutes of the board, again, I was looking for information, was on the board on the website. The minutes of the board were from April of 2023. They have been populated and put up since, and it's important that those minutes are put up there, and by doing so, it ensures that council, members of the public, and other interested stakeholders kind of know what's going on, what the board's talking about, and it gains a lot of buy-in, especially if we know what's going on and we can budget and whatnot for that, or council can express opinions otherwise at the get-go. The audit of financial statements. So the bylaw states that the board shall keep all their records and whatnot, and it shall be audited by the auditors of the municipality in a like manner and the same as the other accounts of the municipality at the same time. And so observing the financial statements, last year's financial statements were unaudited, and because they were unaudited, they were qualified statements because of the limited scope that a review engagement provides. And a search in our records, I wasn't able to find where we have actually received the financial statements and files over time. So it doesn't seem to be a practice in place. So the impact, of course, is audited financial statements are a means for the library board and for council members to obtain assurance that public funds are appropriately recorded for completeness, accuracy, and validity. So given the year of time, I expect that they've probably already committed a review engagement to the current, or to their auditor for this year. So we're bringing forward asking council to accept their proposed auditor once I confirm who it is for this year. And then moving forward, we will incorporate that audit within the town's audit on an annual basis. So we talked about the local appropriation there's charts there that were information provided by the provincial government, and there is a wide range. So for example, as you're saying, you know, the MD of Willow Creek, I'm almost certain doesn't have a library. They contribute to probably Coaldale. But it does show that, again, we are quite high. The average, if you take all the averages, 253,838 for 2021, as opposed to the town of Peace River's 356,000. In 2022, the average is 267,000, as opposed to Peace River's 356,000. Hours of operation, again, all the websites where I could view and obtain hours of operation were captured. There it shows, the data shows that the town of Peace River is the second lowest for hours of operation available to the public. When you expand those hours out, I recognize that some libraries change their hours over the summer or during holidays or whatnot, but I just assumed that the hours were standard for each week. And when you calculated it out, and then you did the hours, the cost per hour based on our requisition funding and the hours of our community, and based on compared to the data that I received, the average cost per operating hour is $99.25, and the Peace River's average cost per hour is $166.98. Maximizing your operating hours goes without saying, reduces your fixed cost per hour, although the variable cost is in your wages, so it does require an analysis to see if it becomes more cost effective to operate for longer hours. Library remuneration. So the letter that was received dated February 9th from the library board member at large Willix suggested that library staff are undercompensated. And when the library director came and presented, she was mentioned or indicated that the 5% per year increase was to fund a compensation improvement plan over 5 years, because the director also felt that the salaries and wages were underfunded. We were hoping to provide some assistance to the director in this area. We have a software that we use, our HR department, that we plug in job descriptions and tasks and risks associated and whatnot, and it calculates a salary range for us. But unfortunately, it didn't really prove to be much success in this task because it's all benchmarked against our own internal proprietary information. It's not related to other libraries and library positions and whatnot. So for that reason, afterwards, I learned that it's the same reason why we don't use that software to determine the FRN, Family Resource Network staff that we engage, because they're not comparative positions to benchmark against. So just, I did see a couple of positions there that were recently online. I've just populated in there to speak with the library chair about. I didn't do any observations because it wasn't in my scope that I was looking for, but I feel that, you know, comparing library wages to libraries is the best comparative for the board to use rather than the town of Peace River salaries and wages. And finally, the last thing I looked at was sustainability of the intermunicipal collaboration framework. So the ICF agreement with County Northern Lights includes ICF funding for the library. And that is about 165,000 that we allocate towards the library that we receive from them. And in the future, there will be no ICF component or library component in our ICF funding agreements. It is a position of the library, municipal affairs library services manager, that libraries go and find their own funding. We know that sounds good when you say it fast, but we know that our library recently lost funding from India Peace because of their budget constraints, and they felt they needed to redirect the funding elsewhere. Sorry, Sunrise County. I always get them mixed up. So anyways, yeah, we know it's at risk. We know that it's going to be not available to us to fund after 2027, and council's going to have some difficult decisions. So the recommendation that the library starts thinking about future funding partners and strategies on how to come up with some funding shortfalls that may happen. And so that was there for consideration for council, just to digest on and give some context to the funding that we are providing the library.
Okay, so a lot of information there, even if you do read it a couple of times. I guess Councillor Good has raised a couple of points. I know from sitting on the regional library board that the regional library board gets some funding that also lands in the municipal library boards coffers. Not very much. It is $225 per population, but that would be in their budget. My question was, for our library, the building itself, the town owns the building, and who pays the utilities to? Does the town or does the library?
I believe the library pays utilities, yes.
So that would have already probably seen a substantial change in the past year or so. I just wondered about that. What else? I know before ICFs that the surrounding municipalities did pay into the library in Peace River just to help the cause, Northern Sunrise in particular, So hard to say what's gonna happen after ICFs are renewed and whatnot when libraries are not officially in the list, or we're told they're not gonna be officially in the list. Any further comments from anybody else? Counselor Good?
Just one further comment. I mean, I just want to point out that my comments notwithstanding, I think that a lot of the recommendations that I read in here are going to be really well thought out. And I want to thank you for that because they're very clear in the direction that they're given. And I think we should have some discussions about these recommendations because I think regardless of what happens following these recommendations would make whatever decision one better and also give a better chance for sustainability and survivability. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, any other comments at this point in time? So what's our go forward at this point in time?
Sorry.
Yes,
Oh,
Councilor
I'm sorry.
CAO?
I was just gonna say, I am meeting with, the chair of the library, Councillor Boychuk, in a couple days, I think Wednesday, to just go over what I found and have discussions to provide some guidance to the chair to take back to the board as well.
I kind of wonder about the number on the board. It seems I think it would be quite hard to get 9 or 10 people to attend a committee of almost any sort in town.
There was a reason for that.
Yeah, so maybe the reason has changed or no? Okay, so,
Again, this is just memory. I could be totally wrong, but my memory is the reason that the number of board members was large was to give have a better chance of having enough people there to make decisions. If they only had 4 people, 5 people, and you need 3 for a quorum, you may not get it. If you have 10 and you need 5 for a quorum or 6 for a quorum, you may have a better chance. And so my memory is that the board size was to kind of achieve a better chance of having functional meetings. Whatever the reason behind it, but I do remember that's vague memories, but
they should maybe examine the number on their board at this point in time, I would think. But anyways, that's on me. Okay, so we will reread this and you'll have your discussions and then we'll have another discussion at some point in the future as to the implications going forward. Like I would like to say that I do fully appreciate the library and the services it provides. I think it's almost unique to our town, some of the things that it can do. And sometimes you need those little unique parts to make the whole kind of attractive, I guess I'd say, you know, the unique parts sometimes attract different elements to the building and the programs there as well. But that's for the future. So maybe someone would provide a motion. Councilor Good.
sure, I'll move the council direct administration to bring the library services brief forward to a future meeting for further discussion.
Thank you. All those in favor? It is carried. Thank you. Okay, reports, and after, just before close, we'll have a little break. So reports, we've got council attendance report from Councillor Boychuk. And he's not here to answer questions. Short report. Anybody have questions for Mr. Boychuk? Go forward. Okay, how about the North Peace Housing Foundation Board meeting synopsis? Councillor Carr, quite a lengthy report. The highlights are.
Well, I didn't attend this meeting because I messed up on my calendar, so I read the report here. It looks fairly good. They opened up the garden court on the hill after that flood that closed them down for 3 or 4 months. People were moving back in the beginning of the month again, so that was very good news. Looks like Belair Lodge is moving ahead with their renovations. looked like a good report. The only negative I saw in it was the lost income or monies due to the flood. And obviously that could not be handled or managed any differently, probably.
Deputy Mayor?
Do you know if everyone came back or was there any residents that had decided to
I
stay?
can give you rough numbers. I don't know, it's not my area, but I think we have between 6 and 8 empty units right now, and we were virtually full. People needed to find other accommodation. Some of them also, by the way, went to Heritage Towers and decided to stay. So there were a few good things like that. I'll make one other comment on the loss of revenues is that there's the positive potential is that a lot of things that were going to be budgeted for replacement over the next 5 or 10 years, like new carpets in the hallway and stuff, will no longer have to be done because they were done now. And I'm gonna make a comment probably out of turn a bit. One of the indications we got from Service Master is that a project of this size normally takes about a year to get people back into a building, like if a department goes down for this kind of a reason that you're looking at. I think you were there for those discussions, Brad.
Yeah.
That they would normally expect to be about a year before people could move back in. And this was accomplished within 3 months. And I think that that's incredible. I think it's a really good accomplishment by the people who were involved. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, really nothing to do with it, but there was a lot of work done by everybody and a lot of understanding by the residents and working together to make sure that this was as minimal an incident as it could have been. So it was a horrible incident, but it worked out. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
So Councillor Carr, I guess one question I would have is, at one point in time, North Peace Housing had a plan for, I call them the duplexes at the north end of town, sort of kitty corner to the store. And I was wondering if we could get an update on what their capital plan is for that, area.
I could ask about that. I
Yeah,
know that they're
that's right.
redoing a couple units in there now.
I'd like to know because the plan was to perhaps tear some down, build some others that are more, I don't know, their size was more in tune with what is needed.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
So,
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
are you talking about like Spruce Square area?
Yeah.
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 Sure, if it's up to date.
Those are provincially owned facilities. They're not owned by North Peace Housing. They're managed by North Peace Housing on behalf of provincial government. So there's provincial government funding that would need to be put in place for any kind of redevelopment. So I just, there's sort of misunderstanding sometimes of what North Peace Housing owns, funds manages, et cetera. And I think when you're looking at a development like that, your cost would be coming from the provincial government. There's going to be major, and also the other thing that's going on right now is the needs assessment, which is in progress, and I think Brad's aware of this. Maybe Councillor Carr's aware of this. Also, there's a needs assessment being done in the whole region concerning all different kinds of demographic information, so to find out what are the needs for social housing, what are the needs for seniors housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that will probably drive any future decisions because a lot of, again, the world changed, but COVID, just for one example, the world's changed in a lot of ways over the last 5 to 10 years that probably weren't expected even 5 years ago. So those numbers are being revisited.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Councillor Carr?
No, not for me.
Okay.
Thank you. I wasn't aware that they were planning to make changes down there, so
Yeah.
I will ask.
Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, CEO Miller?
Sorry, may I just ask, because we were about, I'm having an RFP drafted for a housing needs assessment. So could you share who's doing the study and would that be something that we would have access to? So I wouldn't be repaying for the same information?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I believe, and I could look back in documentation, but I believe the town of Peace River agreed with a number of other municipalities to have North Peace Housing do the assessment, and the numbers that you need for the report that I think you're speaking of. I can get you more details on, again, it's not my area, but there were discussions about that. I believe that there was a motion in council to have the North Peace Housing do the what do you call it, needs assessment and provide all that material to the municipality. So yes, it's good. You're absolutely going to have access to it.
Thank you.
Okay, very good news there, and cut some red tape. Next up, library board draft minutes. So we have these here. As is mentioned, Councillor Boychuk is not here to ask questions of. So it is as it is. Next up, we have the Economic Development Committee draft minutes from February 13th. Deputy Mayor Shannon, highlights maybe?
There weren't really any highlights. We went over our strategic plan, our work plan. Just kind of planning for what we're gonna do in the future, our job fair, things like that. But if anybody has questions to what I'm working on, I love talking about it, so reach out.
Okay, so the investment strategy, it's being presented at the end of February, so at that point it'll be a public document and. or how
After
does that work?
after the revisions and when we go through together, then it will become a public document for everyone. Very excited about that.
And the rural renewal stream seems to be ticking along quite fine. Okay, councilors, any other questions for this committee? Okay, thank you. Next on, we have the February 21st RCMP Regional Community Advisory Committee draft meeting minutes. Councilor Ford?
Sure, thank you, Mayor Manzer. As mentioned earlier in the evening, we did discuss the idea of the motion for the encampments. It was quite well received and looking for the outcome of what happens with the notice of motion. Also, Councillor Boychuk attended the prior meeting and mentioned that the group was looking for an update on SEPTED, which I gave them last Wednesday, in regards to the stuff that the town of Peace River yet has to do. And I did mention to them that a lot of those items are still budgetary. As an example, the planters on Main Street, they were talking about putting wrought iron fencing around them, so that's a budgetary item and still yet to be looked at. Also, we did discuss the grant program that's out, that's looked after by Deputy Mayor Shannon's group. So they were excited about that. Mayor of Grimshaw, they're looking at a lock a trailer program, hitch lock campaign. So we're gonna try and incorporate that in with our lock it or lose it program that we run in Peace River. After speaking with Sergeant Brown, we've been asked to hopefully get the lock or lose it program running up in the spring and run it right through the year. But in the last 2 weeks, we've had approximately 5 to 7 vehicles stolen within the town limits of Peace River. And the majority of those vehicles were unlocked, had keys in them, or the vehicle was unlocked and the vehicle was running. And so that lock it or lose it program kind of talks to that and trying to get behaviors changed. And just on the report, 10.8, there's two 10.8s on here, so it should be 10.10, but under Dave LeBlanc's report, it should read CAO, not CEO. And no, other than that, that's all I have.
Great. Any questions of Councilor Ford? This one? Okay, perhaps someone would move that council accept items 9.1 through 9.5 for information.
All right.
Okay.
My apologies, Madam Mayor. Also coming through the RCMP Regional Advisory Committee meeting, We have a representative there from the seniors group in town. And the seniors did write the town of Peace River a letter, which I was sent, so I did forward that on to CAO Miller, and I do believe, is that in our draft package?
It's in our communications.
Yeah, so I would like to point notice to that letter of concern from our seniors in town.
Okay, we'll get to that one maybe. Okay, thank you. So perhaps, Councillor Ford, you're moving items, 9.1 through 9.5 for information.
Sure.
So moved. All those in favor? It is carried. Information. So we've got council communication package of February 9th. And, well, it says February 9th here. I looked at the one that was sent on Friday, February 23rd, and that's where the Peace River Senior Citizens Club letter is. So I would like to suggest, as they address the letter to the mayor and council, Town of Peace River, Dan Williams, Arnold Gerson, that because it's addressed to us, we respond to it. And basically, they are stating their concern about mental health and addiction services, the homeless, catch and release. Mr. Ford, do you want to speak to any other parts of it?
No, that was pretty much it in the letter. The one thing that the gentleman did mention publicly in the meeting is a lot of the seniors are also a little scared to be walking downtown and on our dikes just because of the current situation.
So I think we appreciate and understand and share their concerns. And our letter would perhaps speak to that and maybe outline a couple of the things that we're partnered with. Do we need a motion to write that letter in reply, or what's best? Yeah. Council Ford, do you want to make a motion to reply?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I would put a motion on the floor to direct administration to draft a letter for the mayor's signature to reply to the seniors letter that was sent to the town. Sure.
Thank you. Any questions on that? All those in favor? It is carried. Thank you. Okay, next, notice this motion, CAO Miller.
I have none, thank you.
Comments from the public. Key communication items, councilors, what would you suggest for tonight, in today's meeting?
Councillor Ford's notes of motion, which is very important.
Okay, so that motion about leasing land either side of the river in town limits. We're not over so much tonight, it's kind of hard to.
I'll put the briefing note regarding nuclear power plant discussion, just to make sure that it's considered as part of the discussion that we had tonight.
Yeah.
I think also the briefing note for the library, I mean, and I'm saying this for their benefit, that the earlier these issues are considered or discussed, probably the better for everybody. So at least being aware of where the challenges are going to lie in the change in the funding models, et cetera. Those would be mine.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Okay, so maybe that covers that. How about we have what do you need? 5 minutes? 7 minutes break? 7-minute break. We're back here at 7:10. Then we'll go into closed and carry on. You.
I got a question. Have we passed the bylaw about camping on town property yet?
No,
Is
it's coming forward.
Oh, okay, thank you.
We had the discussion on it.
Yeah, we've done that.
Yes.
You do that.
Once that passes, like if you were to try and put up a tent or an encampment, like you